Hello everybody, just wanted to do a short video of an example of how to do the CBT developing awareness exercise. So here I've worked through my own real life situation and I'm going to go through it step by step. So if you follow your sheet with the blue circles, this is what happened for me. So what you do is you first explain, you write down, and you can do it on the sheet or you can do it like I've done it here, just on a piece of paper, the situation that has been triggering for you or uncomfortable. So the situation that happened for me was that the gym manager quoted Tim and I the new cost of hiring the room for the sound healing, which I felt was unreasonably expensive and obviously didn't like what he quoted me. And then so what you do is with the situation, you want to explain who was involved, what happened, where did it happen. So this for me was sent via an email, but there was also a discussion face-to-face prior to this. But this specific situation was via email. So you really want to flesh out as much information as you can and write it all down. Try in the situation part not to get caught up in the emotion. This is more just the facts of it. So if anybody else was to witness as an outsider what happened, then they would report exactly the same thing. So the gym manager quoted Tim and I the new cost of the room for the sound healing. To be honest, even me putting in there, which I feel is unreasonably expensive, I could probably cross that out because that's not the situation that's subjective. So, we don't want it to be subjective. We want it to be objective. So then from there, you move to the core beliefs. Now you'll see in the list on the right-hand side that there's some examples of some common negative core beliefs. And these are core beliefs that my experience, people resonate with some of them. So the one that might be stronger for you might not actually be there, so that's okay. If there's something that is a negative core belief, which is actually not truth, but it's like through childhood and through experiences and maybe traumas, we've been led to believe these about ourselves. So in this example with the situation of the gym manager, I then looked at what are some of the core beliefs about myself in this situation. So the beliefs that came up were I am not good enough, I am feeling or I am unsupported, and I don't count or I don't matter. So these aren't truth, but once we start observing these false beliefs we tell ourselves that is really why we're getting triggered, it makes it easier for us to see the bigger picture and to disperse any of the overwhelming emotions that are coming with this situation. After you've done the core beliefs, you go to the thoughts. So here you write down any thoughts that came up in that situation. So for me, I had all of these negative thoughts like, this is so unfair, it's such a ripoff, like these people are so selfish, all they care about is money, they don't care about me or the rest of the community. So all of these thoughts were running through my mind. So you might have a whole page of thoughts that you want to write out, and I encourage you just to really give light to all of them. And in situations, for example, if it's a road rage situation, you might not even be aware of the thoughts that came out. So just give yourself time to sit in a quiet space and try to take yourself back to, what thoughts were going through your mind at that time. Then we move through down to the emotions. So what did you start to experience through this situation? What were the emotions that came up? And for me, in the beginning, it was anger, frustration, feeling powerless, some sadness came up, and then lots of resentment towards the gym and the manager. And in there as well, I do think it's worth putting in, if you have experiences of, gratitude, or there's some really positive emotions that you start to experience through a situation because you're in that space of balancing it out already. For example, in this situation, I had all of this stuff come up first, like the anger and the low vibrational emotions. But then I started to look at what I was grateful for, that we actually did have a space to get started with sound healing. And that we've encouraged, and we've had so many people from the gym come. So there is gratitude in there that I will add that to my list. So they don't all have to be negative. I suppose what we're trying to do though is figure out why this experience was triggering. So most often it will be an uncomfortable emotion you're experiencing if it's triggering. Then once you've done the emotions, you go to the body sensations. So this is about awareness this week. We're bringing awareness to our thoughts, or our emotions, and our body sensations with our behaviors. So I started to recognize that with all of these emotions and these thoughts going on, I started to have a tight jaw, my neck started feeling really tight, and an uneasy stomach. And that lasted for about a day or two with this situation of the email. Then we have awareness on that. We can then look at our behaviors. So the behaviors for me, initially, I didn't respond because I was in such a state of anger and frustration and resentment that I knew if I responded then and there, it wouldn't have been an effective email. In the past, though, before I was aware of CBT, I would have actually responded and let my anger come through in another email to be like, well, I'm right, you're wrong, and really allow those overwhelming emotions to come forward really in an ineffective way. And that wouldn't serve me anyway, because Tim and I want to do the sound healing at the gym, although the rate they're charging us we feel is just unfeasible and it's unrealistic. So we would lose out. If I was rude to them and was like, well, stuff that, then we wouldn't be able to do it anyway. So what I did is I took time and meditated on it, and then I sent my first reply. And it shared how I felt. And I was sharing that I felt unsupported, that I felt like just because I wasn't a trainer there anymore, I'd been bumped out of the team. And that was the language he'd used, that I wasn't part of the team. And so I shared how I felt. And what I did was hold back the anger and abuse that I wanted to yell at him. And instead, I just communicated how I felt in the experience. And through this, what the outcome of that actually was, which it is important to look at the outcome, is that he replied, and he didn't change anything. But it was it was allowing me to be grateful for what we have, recognize that we can actually start looking elsewhere, which we have, for where we want to hold the sound healings in 2020, and that this was a really great opportunity to get started, and there's a lot of gratitude in that. So if this is the rate that they're going to charge, then that's the rate they're going to charge. But it allowed a place of acceptance for me, and also didn't burn bridges. It didn't cut ties where I then lashed out at him and he turned around and then says to me, okay, fine, well, you can't do it at all. And I ruin it for everyone. So my old behavior before this CBT work, which has changed my life, would have actually I wouldn't have been aware of my beliefs, my thoughts, my feelings, the body sensations. And then so my behavior would have just been influenced by all of this negative, low vibrational energy that was around this situation. And it wouldn't have gotten me what I wanted anyway. So the purpose of this is actually to start showing you that, it doesn't mean that you're always going to get what you want, but it can actually give you relief. It can give you serene and a serene experience and experience of gratitude, and in situations that are actually outside of your control. The other thing that I want to show, which I'm just going to do here, this is another really cool little acronym that you can use. So SAAND. So this is something that I started using. It was given to me by my the old manager that used to be at the gym when I was really struggling with overwhelming emotions, and this ties into this CBT experience. Activity. So in a situation, for example, like what's just happened, this is what happens these days for me more automatically than it used to. First of all, I stop. So I didn't reply to the email. I stopped to allow myself time to start working through these next steps, which is start working through this CBT process. Because if I didn't stop, I would have reacted instead of responded. And that's where mindfulness practice comes in. It allows us the opportunity to respond rather than react with anger, which doesn't help us anyway. So in any situation, as much as you can, mentally stop. And if there's the opportunity to actually physically stop, then physically stop. Give your body a moment to just recalibrate from the experience. Then acknowledge. Excuse my writing. So we stop, then we acknowledge. I want you to acknowledge how you feel. Acknowledge the situation of what's just happened. So this still is tying into this awareness around what's just happened. Let's use my example. So I acknowledge that I felt all of these uncomfortable emotions. I acknowledge my thoughts. So this is where it all ties into the thoughts, the emotions, the body sensations. You actually become aware and acknowledge what's going on in the situation. Stop, acknowledge, accept. Now, accept does not mean that you have to like it, but a form of acceptance means that you don't just keep denying that it happened, because you cannot change what has happened. So I had to actually accept that this was the offer the gym were proposing, and there was nothing I could do about it. So this was what they were sharing. There was part of it that I didn't agree with, but if I say, okay, well, I'm not going to accept that, that means that I have to go elsewhere. So then that cancels out what Tim and I really want to do anyway, and it doesn't serve anyone. So I do have a choice. So here you have a choice, but the form of acceptance, or the experience of acceptance and practicing it, is actually what's going to bring you peace and more joy and clarity, because I shouldn't say clarity, but more peace, because you're actually going to let go of the idea of trying to control things that you can't. Now, the next one is to normalize. So that's in terms of normalizing how I feel, recognizing that, I am a human being and I'm going to feel these emotions of anger, and I'm going to feel these emotions of sadness and resentment and frustration. But that I've had these experiences before where these emotions have come up, and recognize that they do pass, that emotions are energy in motion and they're just temporary. So the more I can normalize my experience of what I'm going through and connect with the fact that we are all human, we all have these experiences, we all go through these different uncomfortable emotions. And also just this can come into with it as well. Normalizing can be adding compassion, because, if all I was doing was being selfish and thinking about myself and not taking into consideration the manager who'd contacted me and had said he's trying to help me rather than not help me, I'm not showing him much compassion for his job that he's actually doing, which is to make money for a gym. It is a business. And I've completely disregarded that in the previous part when he sent me the email. So if I normalize and go, well, he's human and I'm human and he has these feelings and experiences sometimes as well, I can start to normalize the experience of this is what happens as human beings. So it brings us back to this commonality, this connection of oneness. And then the last part is discuss, which is exactly what I'm doing with you guys now. So discuss can be work through a CBT exercise. It could be go and see your a psychologist if you have one. That could be reach out to family and friends that you trust and you want to talk to. Discuss could also just be moving the energy through with journaling, with dancing, with singing, with art, being creative. So it's any form of discussion that's going to move that energy so you don't hold on to the stagnant energy that's built up, or you don't hold on to that resentment of, if I hold on to this resentment around the gym, it's actually not going to serve me. It's going to impact my relationship with them, which in turn will impact the sound healings, and then they might bump me out. So the more that I can just discuss this, unpack it, and also start to look at my side of it rather than just point the finger and blame the whole time, it starts to change everything. So that's a little thing for you guys to use, which is SAND with 2 A's. So it's very easy to remember. SAND with 2 A's. Stop, acknowledge, accept, normalize, and discuss. So good luck with your first activity for this week, which is on awareness. And remember, be gentle with yourself. It's all about just generating awareness. The more awareness we have, then the more control we have over things like our behaviors. Rather than reacting, we can choose a conscious response. So if you guys can post your sheets when you do them, we really encourage you to do that. And start with something like a small minor trigger, so it just allows you an opportunity to get used to the process. And the aim eventually is that we can start doing this in our head. We don't have to actually write it all down. So thanks for watching and good luck. Lots of love.